All right, hey folks, I'm here with Bill Press, host of the Bill Press Show, White House correspondent here. Just moments ago, we heard from both Sean Spicer and EPA Administrator Pruitt, mostly talking about the running away from the Paris Accord. So tell us a little bit about what it was like yesterday to be in the Rose Garden for that ceremony, or whatever you would want to call it.
Disgusting. And embarrassing to be an American and basically to see a president of the United States, I'm trying not to exaggerate, to see a president of the United States capitulate and say we are no longer the leader of the free world. We are out of the running. You guys can solve the world's problems. We're going to go off by ourselves. And then just tell, I mean, a pack of lies. Well, let me back up. The scene in the Rose Garden, it was so surreal. I've been to many presidential events in the Rose Garden. You walked in yesterday, and they had the Marine band playing, a Marine jazz band.
That's not normal.
Never. Nobody had ever seen that before. They were playing jazz, as I said. Are they going to play Au revoir Paris? You know, and then they had about 5 rows for reporters, and then they packed the Rose Garden with staffers from the White House and from the old executive office building, so that. So a cheering crowd, you know, they turned it into freaking, I'll say, pep rally. And then it starts off with Pence introduces Trump saying, oh, he's the greatest American ever lived. He's been fighting for American people. He's going to make America great again. You know, they all cheer. It's like Donald Trump comes out.
Nothing like that ever before.
No, never. Yeah, and then Trump does his pack of lies, which I'll get back to. And then he says, I want to bring Scott Pruitt up here. And then Scott Pruitt says, what a great man Donald Trump is. He's so courageous. You know, he gave that same shit today at the White House. And just praising him. And Trump is standing there just sucking it all in. It really was disgusting. And then, as I said, it was just like one lie after another. Like, we're going to get out of Paris, but we're going to renegotiate Paris. You can't renegotiate Paris. You cannot renegotiate Paris. It's just not going to be done. The coal jobs are all coming back. The coal jobs are not coming back. I mean, it was, I don't know, it's just disgusting. It was hard to sit there and not either vomit or stand up and say, you're full of shit.
Do you think that if the deal were not struck in the city of Paris, it would have changed Trump's outlook toward it? In other words, if it was the Moscow Accord or the Buenos Aires Accord or the Tokyo Accord. He seemed really fixated on this notion that he was going to stick it to the French, not necessarily understanding that that's just where it was signed. It's not a French thing.
Certainly the fact that it was Paris gave them that little bit of edge. It gave them some, ability to come up with some good lines, like, I'm here to represent Pittsburgh, not Paris. Of course, we know the mayor of Pittsburgh said, bullshit, we in Pittsburgh, we're staying in. But I would just point out that last night, when it was over, Scott Pruitt, who, like Donald Trump, poked fun at the French all day long, went out for dinner with his staff to Le Diplomate in Washington.
He did that on purpose, you think?
Hypocrites. Yeah, absolutely.
How was...
No, I don't really think, in the end, it would not have made a difference. It could have been Rome, it could have been Berlin, because it's based on the fact that Donald Trump thinks climate change is a hoax. He said that during the campaign, invented by the Chinese. That's what he believes.
How was Scott Pruitt today?
Terrible. He is such a phony, right? And he got up there today and said again, we're going to renegotiate, which you can't do. He said that the 195, the world applauded when we signed Paris. The reason is because we were giving up our right to have our own energy policy and do what we want, and we wouldn't be able to build coal plants, for example, or whatever, which is bullshit. I mean, the Paris Agreement is a volunteer agreement, and every country comes up with its plan for achieving that goal. So if we said we're going to build 150 coal plants but we're going to put scrubbers on them or something and keep it clean and achieve that goal. We could do that. We can do whatever the hell we want under Paris. We just commit to a certain goal. So he gave that nonsense again today. And by the way, he refused probably on 8 occasions to answer the question, does Donald Trump believe climate change is real or does he believe it's a hoax? Scott Pruitt wouldn't answer that question because he's afraid to. He can't. He knows if he tells the truth, it's all over.
I was a little bit inspired afterwards by the outpouring of opposition that came from this. Everything from the plutocrats like Michael Bloomberg saying, I'll pay for it. I'll pay the $14 million that the U.S. still owes, to the Pittsburgh mayor saying Pittsburgh is still in, to 80 major companies saying that they're still in, to all these towns and cities and states around the country saying we're still in. Justin Trudeau, I don't know if you noticed this, said we're disappointed by the decision of the United States federal government. Very specifically separating the United States federal government from the rest of us, which is interesting. It gives all of us an opportunity to say, you know what, have fun with your climate change denial, but the world has moved past you, and we're going to go forward with the world. Was there any sense among the White House staff that what they're doing might be only symbolic? Usually the symbolic wins are on the environmental side. Perhaps this time the symbolic win is actually on the denier side.
That's a very astute observation. Let me just put it this way. When I walked out of the White House yesterday after suffering through that Rose Garden clown show, I was just walking right here down Pennsylvania Avenue, and I looked at that fence, and I said to myself, there are parallel universes here. There's, on that side of the fence, they believe that Donald Trump has created 1 million new jobs since November. They believe he went to Europe and it was a phenomenal success. They believe all that shit. They believe that climate change is a hoax. They believe that they're going to save all kinds of the jobs, by getting out of Paris and everything. And on this side of the fence, nobody believes a word they're saying. So to your point, I too, the fact that you had the really smart, impressive corporate leaders today like Tim Cook and Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and you name them, right? Jamie Dimon, right, who are saying, this is our future, our technology, we've got to lead.
Lloyd Blankfein, even.
Yeah, Lloyd Blankfein, right? So those corporate leaders. And then you got the governors. Yeah, Jerry Brown, whom I worked for, my friend. California now is basically the leader of the free world, Jerry Brown's on his way to China.
Makes him the leader of the free world.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, he is. Jerry Brown is, and by the way, California's had the toughest emission standards, the toughest new cafe standards for a long time. Andrew Cuomo is up. There are 60-some mayors that came out. He has Seattle and Pittsburgh and mayors across the country. So I think that they're going to find that, plus, they're going to find that it's going to be harder to get out than to finish that thought than they think. Plus, it takes 4 years, 3 years until they can get out, and then another year for the paperwork. By that time, Donald Trump will be gone. That's my silver lining.
So if we have questions or comments, we come in. One thing on Jerry Brown, since we're talking about him while Eric's looking for a question or comment, the California Senate passed basically a single-payer bill the other day. It now moves to the House, where, who knows, we'll see. So there's a lot of enthusiasm around that. My understanding from the California political world is that if it did get to Jerry Brown, he would veto it. So tell us a little bit about the personality of Jerry Brown and why that probably doesn't surprise you.
Well, Jerry Brown is sui generis, as they say, right? He is unique. You can't really pigeonhole him. I was his policy director for 4 years. I'm a single-payer guy. If I were there, I'd be making that argument. But I can also, Jerry also has a very practical side. And Jerry, I can see that he's also cheap. Right. Yeah, as I say, right? Yeah. I've told him that, by the way. And so I can see that Jerry would say, look, this may be a great pipe dream, but in reality, it's just not going to happen. So let's do what we can in the present system. I'll tell you one thing you've got to say. Under California's had probably the best response to Obamacare. They've signed up more people, added more people under Medicaid than anybody else. under Diana Dooley, the HHS secretary. So it's really Obamacare is really working in California, and I think Jerry's thought is probably, I don't want to screw that up. But, there was something like on environmental issues particularly, but Jerry was always way, way, way out in front. On criminal justice issues, he and I had a lot of disagreements. And so I could understand, it's not automatic that Jerry will sign single payer, and he'd probably veto it.
Eric, what do people want to know?
Danny Knapp says, Obama admitted the Paris Accord was weak. Does this backlash create political opportunity for a much stronger plan? Can something positive come of this?
I'm curious what Bill would say of this. To this, the plan itself is not going to be renegotiated. It's in effect, but I do think, in a paradoxical way, he could be making an interesting point that now not only do people want the Paris Accord to succeed and the fight against global warming and climate change to succeed, they also want to stick it to Donald Trump. The whole world now wants to show Donald Trump that he's a loser and that they're going ahead without him. And so if there were marginal efforts in places around the world, they actually did maybe get a boost here. And they said, you know what? Let's go for that 15% reduction and let's move it up 2 years just to show Trump and to show this reactionary tide that it is doable. I think that's plausible.
I do too, and I'm the eternal optimist, I guess. But first of all, I think this could turn into something positive in the fact, as we were talking, cities and states can really move and do. It's not as good as having the federal government on board, but do everything they can at their level. And you get a big state like California, that's a lot. Big state like New York, that's a lot. The other thing is, I do think you'll find, so there's a leadership vacuum now for the free world, right? So you're going to have Justin Trudeau and Emmanuel Macron and Angela Merkel and Theresa May all vying to see who can be. Chinese. And then I was just going to add, and the Chinese and the Indians are both seeing an opportunity here, particularly in the technology. Senator Ed Markey from Massachusetts has made this point. China right now, they're already leading in producing solar panels. They're going to take this and run with it while we're digging freaking coal mines, or supposedly. Yeah. Right. By the way, in the Rose Garden yesterday, Donald Trump bragged about the fact we're going to open a new coal mine in September. Yeah, the Acosta coal mine in western Pennsylvania. 70 jobs. 70 jobs.
Right, yes. Yes, coal mines in West Virginia employ like 10 people nowadays. Yeah.
And they
right, because it's all machines. And yeah. Eric, you got another one?
James Craig says, the Earth will be fine. It will adapt. We are not powerful enough to destroy the planet. We are powerful enough to kill ourselves, but the planet will continue on. It's kind of arrogant to think otherwise.
Well, nobody said that we're going to nuke the planet. Craig? Was his name Craig? James Craig. Nobody said we're going to drive a nuclear weapon to the center of the Earth and explode it into a bunch of asteroids. Yeah, James has probably read The Sixth Extinction by Elizabeth Colbert. Read that if you're wondering what effect humanity can have on the planet. And when we say the planet, we don't mean the rocks underneath it. We mean the birds, the animals, the fish, the plants that live on it. And yes, if and when humans are eventually extinct, there will be other animals and fish and plants probably. There is a scenario where there aren't. Actually, starts the book Climate Wars.
Yeah. I mean, let's just concede his point. Okay, yeah, the planet will still be there. But the idea that there's a big piece of rock with cockroaches on it circling the sun, I'd like to think a little bit more about the planet than that. That's not good enough for me. So,
worst case scenario.
I love what Emmanuel Macron said. Two things he said. Number one, on whether you can renegotiate Paris, he said, there's no plan B because there's no planet B. I love that. And then he also said that he said it's not make America great again, it's make our planet great again.
Yes, the Nobel Prize in trolling is going to be delivered early this year to Emmanuel Macron. Anybody else have anything? Or?
Sure. Mary Leyendecker is saying that Trudeau separates the federal government from the efforts of U.S. states, cities, businesses, corporations, 60 mayors, and bigly citizens like Lloyd Blankfein. And then there were other people talking on a larger scale that there are a number of countries. I think this person, I couldn't find his name just now, but 2/3 of the countries in the world didn't sign this. So what's the big deal if America left?
I think he means 2 or 3 countries didn't sign it.
We know there are 195. So there are 2 levels of Paris. 195 countries endorsed it or whatever, and then 145 have actually committed or something. But so it's 195. That, by the way, we brought in. You got to come back and give credit to John Kerry particularly, and Barack Obama. We lagged for like in Copenhagen and before, but once we got into it, the United States took the lead. We put this deal together. We got 195 countries, and we're getting out before it's even a year old. It just kicked in. It became effective in November 16. So, we look like international flakes, right? But of the countries of the world, there are only 2 that did not endorse it before yesterday. 2 did not endorse it. Syria and Nicaragua. Nicaragua didn't because they don't think it goes far enough. It's tough enough. The Sandinistas, right? So let's put them aside. So now there's Syria and the United States. Donald Trump and Bashar al-Assad are the only 2, I hate to call them leaders, right? Heads of countries who have taken their countries, either refused to join or taken the countries out of. So there we are in company with Syria. How do you like that for the image of the
And I am sure that Syria's CO2 output has actually plummeted in the last 7 years or so. War does that.
Yeah.
The
residue from the bombs has increased, but
which leads to cooling, probably. Anything else, or should we let people start their weekend?
Okay, I'll just read you what I have.
It is Friday.
Okay, and actually Sean Spicer ended the conference saying it's officially leave work early.
He did. Yeah, he did say that Sean Spicer might be gone.
Oh, what? Oh,
he said leave work early.
He's yeah. Well, the last thing
and not come back.
Okay, so a few people got set off by the Earth will still be here. Brenda Lee says there is no economy on a dead planet. So I guess, the planet will be here, but whether it's hospitable to human life is really the question we need to be asking. And then John Padgett says, when Miami is underwater and 1 billion people are displaced and starving, will CO2 emissions be an issue? And then one last thing, Brenda Lee again. She's talking about fracking, and Pruitt called it horizontal. I think he mentioned it as fracking and as horizontal drilling. And I've heard some reports on NPR that was interesting that actually places like Pittsburgh would benefit more if fracking continued and benefit less if they started coal mining again. So if you want to respond to those 3 things and then wrap it up.
Yes, but Pennsylvania's kind of run the table on its fracking. They've fracked that thing to death, and they're already suffering, the consequences from poor water supply and these companies that have come into Pennsylvania. They get rich, they take the money out, and they leave the residents with like a $1,500 check for the right to destroy the water underneath their property while they made off with hundreds of thousands of dollars. And Pruitt's right that one reason that we've reduced our CO2 output is the increase in fracking. But what we don't quite know yet, and maybe we're measuring it wrong, is the amount of methane that is released through the fracking process, which may actually cancel out all of the gains that we're supposedly making. So, that's something worth Googling.
Yeah, I agree with you on the fracking, and there have been a lot of great efforts on the part of a lot of local organizations around the country, state after state after state, to oppose fracking, and Bernie Sanders has been way out in front on that. I want to speak to the first part of the question, which is the rise in sea levels. This is probably the most immediate impact of climate change that we're going to experience, and it's already started. Miami, the streets flood every day, right?
It's an issue in the mayor elections, right?
Yeah. It's a sunny day like this, the streets of Miami, with no rain, the streets of Miami will be flooding because of the rise of sea levels. New York City, Boston, Washington, D.C. are all talking about monumentally expensive physical barriers or something to prevent the flooding of major population areas and economic. But think of the tourism down both coasts, right? Probably I think it's something like 80% of Americans live within a couple of miles of the coast, right? Or maybe that's not. But massive dislocations. The Navy, the biggest naval installation is Norfolk, Virginia. It's the headquarters of the Atlantic Fleet. The base there floods now 11 times a year, just normally, and they're already talking about relocating that entire naval base. Think about naval bases all around the planet. I mean, and there are villages in Alaska already today that have had to relocate to the mainland. There are islands in the Pacific that have disappeared. Right, so it's happening, and when that hits, you talk about loss of jobs. I mean, that's going to be colossal.
And his other point was the billion climate refugees, and to take it back to Syria, there is a very persuasive case to be made that the war in Syria came about because of climate change, a drought that led to soaring food prices, that led to demonstrations in the street. The demonstrations in the street were suppressed violently. They turned from a nonviolent movement to a violent movement, and then Saudi Arabia and us and everybody else pumped a bunch of guns in, and you get what you get.
I saw this factoid the other night. I was doing some research. So Glacier National Park, right up in Montana, they used to have 150 glaciers. There are 26 left. They're going to have to rename the park in another year or so. So today at the briefing, I was there. Scott Pruitt said, "Kid you not, what we need," he said, "is we need a national debate about climate change, and really talk about this and see." I mean, that is such bullshit. How long ago was it that Al Gore came out with a movie? Right, even before then. We've been talking about climate change for a long time. 97% of the world's scientists agree. And open your eyes and look around you. And these idiots on the other side of that fence are saying, yeah, let's talk about climate change. Duh.
LBJ mentioned rising CO2 in 1965.
No.
Yeah,
really?
in a speech, and said that we need to deal with it. Yeah. So we had time. We blew it, and we're all going to die. But at least there will be cockroaches on this planet that continues to spin around the country.
That's all that'll be left. Hey, good to see you, man.
Bill.
All right,
thanks.
Have a good weekend.
Have a great weekend. You too.
All right, you too, everybody.
Sean Spicer said it's leave work early day, so everybody go home.